Welcome back to the Empaths Anonymous podcast. Today we have someone so special joining us. We're so excited. We are joined by Cat Lantigua, a first-generation Dominican-American community architect, host of the Chats with Cat podcast and Awake Book Club, and author of Build It and They Will Come, a guide to architecting intentional community, which we're so excited to dive into today with her. She is committed to creating spaces that foster soul-centered conversations and a profound sense of belonging. Welcome to the podcast, Kat.
Thank you for having me.
Of course,
I'm
we're
really
so
excited.
Danny and I both read the book, and when I got finished with it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like our Bible,
Oh
our
my
community building Bible.
gosh.
So
Yeah.
we're
Oh,
so
I'm glad
excited
it
to have you on the
resonated.
podcast.
Yeah. You can't ever see it in frame when we're recording, but off to the side we have acrylic shelves and it's like in a special little spot in our studio and it just like kind of sits there and graces our walls. So we love it.
Oh, I love that. That means everything. It's almost been a year since the book came out and it doesn't feel real still. Like that book carries so much of me in it. And so when I know that it's in different places, I'm like, oh wow, like I am there. Like parts of me are with you. So yeah,
Right.
thank you
Yes.
for having my little baby in your home.
Of course. Yeah. Affecting people when you don't even know it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the first segment of our show that we always ask all of our guests is what's in your cup? So if you're physically drinking on anything, what are you sipping on? And then what's in your life cup? Like, how are you showing up to the podcast today?
I currently have water in my cup. That is what I have been prioritizing lately. It just feels like extra hydration is needed to make sense of everything that is being depleted. I don't know if that makes sense, but that is how I'm kind of looking at it. Like, oh, you are being dehydrated because of the state of the world. So just make sure
Right.
that you continue to nourish yourself. So that's what's in my cup right now, and I'm coming into this moment in time with y'all, just trying to take in everything that I want to be grateful for, trying to center myself and remaining intact despite everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
And we'll get into, more of that as well. It seems like the more and more that we like focus on our community, the more and more that we have to find ways to take care of ourselves too, because it's like, how can we show up to community if we're not nourishing ourselves?
Yeah, and there's always a theme of a lot of times people who give tend to forget that they are also part of that pod of people that need to be taken care of. And so um, I've been trying to remember that. And I think that oftentimes when you are in a place of service, you can sometimes feel like pouring into yourself or carving out time to be intentionally alone can be selfish, or you should be doing something else to, give to others, or you're behind on something that could be helping other people. And it's like, yeah, but you are also somebody that needs to be helped. So that has to be prioritized, even if it doesn't necessarily always feel like the most natural thing to do.
Right.
It feels very unnatural from me, personally
Yeah.
speaking. I had a moment with her earlier this week. She's like, you just have to stop.
Yeah.
Because I'm in a group
Sometimes you just
project.
do.
Yeah. Because I'm in a group project and I like, started to put all these things that also, have priority in my life to the side to help and help and help and help. And she's like, well, it's just not really showing any fruit. It's not really worth your time. And now all these things are getting like pushed to the wayside. So we have that conversation with each other quite often, actually.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's superwoman and she just will keep taking on and taking on. I'm like, you have to remember yourself though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I understand the water comment. I don't know what it is in the air, if it's the season, if it's just allergies, but been feeling extra dehydrated and like headaches are triggered a little bit more these days.
Yeah.
So I know it's probably something in the air,
Mhm.
but let's get into it. We really want to dive into. So thank you for sharing what's in your cup, first of all. Secondly, in your book, which we will also get into a little bit later, you describe how moving back to the Bronx from Miami sparked a desire to find and build community as an adult, which of course we all know is a challenge. We're in that right now. What is your advice to someone who maybe has moved across the country or for other reasons is wanting to find more like-minded people to do life with?
Hmm. I think it's really interesting because oftentimes we're just like, oh, we want to be around people and we don't want to feel alone or lonely, right? And that is a very natural feeling. The thing I would say is it's really important to get clear about like who exactly it is that you're trying to align and who it is that you are trying to manifest. Because
Mm.
um, something I've been thinking about lately is during that season of my life when I was like, 26, like 26 to 29 really was the bulk of it. I just didn't want to be by myself. Like I was willing to say yes to anybody who wanted to hang out. And I think back on some of the things that I had to heal from, and it's like it was the people. Like I wasn't clear enough to make sure that I set boundaries and that I was an attunement with myself and like what it was exactly that I was hoping to step into, what woman was I trying to become. I just knew that I wanted to hang out with people who like wanted to have fun and who had somewhat similar interests, but I didn't get into the granular details of the kind of energy I wanted around me. And at the time I also didn't realize how sensitive I was. I was just like trying my best and I had anxiety and I was overwhelmed, but like so is everybody. So it just felt very normal. And then
Hmm.
now I come to understand that it wasn't just that I was, anxious. It was that I had the wrong people around me and they were influencing me in ways that I wish I had a better understanding of. And so I would say, first and foremost, get clear about who it is that you're trying to become and what kind of people you want to attract. And then once you know what that looks like, then you have to be willing to put yourself out there. And so that can look like showing up to intimate gatherings or, the internet can be a bad place and it can also be a really cool place. And so I think
Mhm.
that once you start to use the internet as a tool, you can be like, okay, well, what is going on in this particular city? I think TikTok is a better resource at this point. Like you can look
Right.
up meetups in such and such city and you can find more specific targeted events there. And then, as I write in the book, if that eventually doesn't feel fruitful, you can become the person that's creating the thing in the city that you're sharing on TikTok or you're sharing in a newsletter where people can now find you. And then at that
Hmm.
point, you can be the architect behind the experience that you are, creating for other people and the community that you're attracting. And you can use specific language to make sure that the people who are coming to you know what you are representing, what you stand for, what you are hoping to manifest. And so there's two routes, it's like you can either
Right.
join something that already exists, and then if you're not satisfied with what's out there, then you can buy the book and then I can help you figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So it was in Miami when you primarily started this or New York? Remind me.
So I started to write a blog when I was still living in Miami, and my approach was different. When I moved to New York, I actually started hosting gatherings, in-person gatherings. When I was in Miami, I was more of like a blogger who was interviewing people in the community and was in the
Right.
community, but like it was through my writing. And then when I
Yeah.
got to New York, I transitioned from writing the blog to then starting the podcast. And so it became kind of like an audio blog. And then I started
Mhm.
interviewing folks that way. And then I was like, there's something else that's missing. And then that's when
Right.
I started hosting the events in my living room that eventually blossomed into the organization that I started.
Okay. Was that like a daunting task for you to take on, or did you just kind of get yourself into that mindset and just kind of go head into it?
I just went head into it.
Mm.
I've come to understand that I am one of those people that I need to just take advantage of the inspiration and like I need to take action. I'm also like an Aries moon and rising. I'm a
Mm.
manifester, my
Okay.
human design. So it's like, now that I know all those things, I didn't know any of that back then, but I'm
Right.
like, yeah, I'm very much a person that needs to take action. I need to initiate when I feel the urge because if I don't and I miss the wave, then I'll start doing something else and I might not even circle back on the other thing. And so I just remember having a feeling and I just started it and I did it and then I just didn't look back.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's commendable.
Yeah.
I My energy tends to flow like that too. Maybe it's like a fire sign thing because I'm a Sag. But I think that a lot of us, and maybe our listeners can relate too, is like sometimes we just get tripped up on the thinking about it part and the how and the when. And
Yes.
sometimes you just have to start into it. And we talk a lot about like starting imperfectly. So you don't have to have the intention behind it and the feeling and the inspiration, but you don't have to have the full picture already mapped out just to start.
I agree with that. And that's something that I've been talking about a lot lately because I started a creative incubator called the Creative Sprint as a result of having gone through a season where I was editing the book and I knew that I had a deadline and I needed to show up at a certain time and I needed to just do the sprint. I needed to finish during a certain window of time. And I loved how I felt during that sprint, but I also then realized like you can apply this to everything. You can apply this to life. You just set a set amount of time and show up to it consistently. Even if it's not perfect, just start and then see where
Yeah.
you're at after 3 months, after 12 weeks, after a month or whatever. And then you come to realize like, oh my God, it's really just a matter of getting out of your own way and time blocking. You're not going to have all the answers right away in the beginning. Nobody does for anything.
Mhm.
The whole point is that you show up over and over and over, and then the answers reveal themselves. But it's the showing up part because people feel like they need more information to sit down, to show up. And that's quite the opposite of what the creative process is. And life is just not like that. And life, as it turns out, is very much a creative journey. And so we just have to stop doing that. We're getting in the way of putting out the things that we know we want to put out, and by doing that, we limit others from experiencing our gifts. And also, time flies, man. Like this goes really
Mhm.
fast. This goes really, really fast. And if you're waiting for the perfect moment to start something, it'll be a year, 2 years, 5 years, and you're still the person that's like, oh yeah, I want to do blah blah blah. And it's like, girl, you could have been done that had you just started 5 years ago when you brought this up the first time, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
We really are in our own way a lot of the time. I wanted to start a podcast for years and years, but I think I just got tripped up on like, well, kind of the imposter syndrome. Like, well, what do I have to say that's different than what everybody else is saying? Like, there's
Yeah.
millions of podcasts out there. Like, why will somebody listen to me? And I think that you're not seeing, like you said, you don't have the full vision of how your gifts are going to affect other people,
Yeah.
and you're really cheating yourself out of that timeline. Like sometimes I think about, and I try not to put pressure on myself, but like if I would have started it 6 years ago, like where would I have been now? And like what different
Hmm.
like gifts and talents and things would I have developed at this point? So I
Hmm.
like I like your perspective a lot. Just take action, decide what is missing in whatever city that you're living in, whatever gap you need to fill, and just
Yeah.
spring to action. And it doesn't have to be this huge success overnight. Maybe, 10 people come to your meetup, or 10 people, do a webinar with you, or whatever it may be. You find people to go to a sports game with, whatever your interests are. Just start it, because the momentum can't build if you don't just do it.
Yeah. Quite literally. It's also like I think that, and I read about this in the book too. It's like we now conflate numbers, with people, and it's like even if one person shows up to your meetup, like one
Yeah.
person took time out of their day to attend something that you put together, like that's a person, that's somebody's
Yeah.
life energy, they have to work the next day, or maybe they took time off. Like you never know what people do to accommodate certain
Mhm.
things. And so it's just important to remember that and to not look at, individual people like massive groups of people, because it's not data that we're collecting from Instagram, it's a person.
Right.
Mhm.
I know.
Yeah.
Social media is so like warped our thinking in that way, because we're always looking for the data, the analytics, that how many people are listening, how many people are watching, how
Yeah.
many people are coming. And I think that we have to kind of destigmatize and rewire our brain in that way, and start viewing people as souls, as somebody who's invested in what you have to offer. So I like
For
that point.
sure.
A major theme on our podcast is being an empath, highly sensitive person, or a deep feeler. When I read your book, which to people listening, please go out and buy it. It really did just make a light bulb go off in my brain. And I just felt very seen as a Black woman
Mm.
in your book, that I think that not a lot of the hot button word is community, and kind of the capitalization of that word has just warped it into something else. So I think that it's really unique that it took that approach. But I related to you in a lot of ways. What has your experience with being a highly sensitive person and this deep sense of having to be independent and not bother people, how has that really shaped and molded you?
That is a constant conversation that I'm having with myself because um I am very sensitive and I can't just be around people like just for the sake of being around people because
Mm.
I pick up on energy that I don't even want to pick up on. And I think I'm naturally inclined when I am around people to just hold space and just be in the experience with them. And oftentimes that looks like me just like getting to the bottom of what their world is looking like and how they're feeling. And I kind of neglect myself in that. Like I'm very much so oftentimes like willing to just like go into the deep with anyone if I'm in proximity because I'm like, well, we're together, so like let's get to the bottom of this. And I realized like I can't really do that as much as I thought I could. And so now I kind of toggle between spending a lot of time by myself and realizing that it is not because I don't like people and that I don't want to be around people. It's just that I
Yeah.
do require a lot of time to recharge. And the world is the way the world is. Like it's only becoming more and more and more intense. And I realize like I need to carve out opportunities to just like be in my own world, to recharge, to make sure that I have as much as possible, I cultivate an optimistic worldview because I am so sensitive. If I stay in the dark too long, I'll just remain there and I won't feel like there's any real reason to keep wanting to create or
Mm.
envision something more positive. Like that's, I think, the double-edged sword of being somebody who's sensitive is like you can be really imaginative and open and optimistic and like you can see the best in everybody and everything. And then simultaneously, if you start to empathize with the suffering of people and the state of the world, you will feel hopeless. And so I think that I need to like do a lot of recharging so that I can make sure I stay in the middle at the very least. I'm trying to go more towards the optimistic point of view all the time, but if I stay in the middle, I'm at least in a good zone because the opposite is obviously a danger zone. So yeah, when it comes to how I connect with people now, it really is a lot of one-on-ones. It's a lot of like people who I trust bringing me around people that they trust. It's a lot of me expressing myself and connecting with people through my art and through my work because there is like a boundary there, but it's also an opportunity for people to really see me. And so I don't know. I've just been trying to understand what my energy type is and what my auric field is like because
Mm.
as a manifester, I'm learning that like we do have a repelling aura. And so like we do push people away, but it's as a means of protection. And so I'm trying to figure out like how do I invite people without sacrificing my energy. And I think that the way that is manifesting now is through my art. I hope
That
that makes
feels
sense.
very. It
Oh yeah, for
does.
sure.
Yeah, it does for us. It does for us
Okay.
too. I'm sure our listeners can relate. I love that so much because I think oftentimes we forget that that's actually just the natural way that we are. So we have to have reminders and we have to be able to think to ourselves, this is what I'm doing, and I keep doing it, and I keep absorbing energy that's not mine, that I don't want. I can either make space for it or I just kind of let it be and move on. But for the most part, because it feels natural to us to listen and to be present and to be like actively involved in someone's life, even a stranger. Like this happens to Christina more often than I think we both realize, is that people will just walk right up to her and just like start chatting away. Or
The
like
whole life
the
story.
whole life story, like she'll get on a phone call where we're supposed to talk about one thing and it ends up being a
Mhm.
completely separate, like from A to
Right.
Z. This is all that's happened. So I don't know if it's just like people can read that energy, or they can tell that you're a person who is capable of listening in that way. I feel
Right.
like a lot of people are not capable of listening to other people in that way. So it's something that we constantly have to just be like, okay, is this really worth my energy? And what type of energy am I working with? It's just very much a lifelong, sounds like a lifelong puzzle to be figuring out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
the constant having to assess, like, is this me or was this from the different person? And allowing yourself to, if you're not aligning with the energy, allowing yourself to feel it out and decide later. I think sometimes I get stuck in this, like, ooh, energy's off, I'm out. And it's like, well, you know what? You can't always just bow out of a situation, or you don't always have time to process it. So, like, let it
Yeah.
just sit. And then if you
Mm-hmm.
feel like you don't vibe with this group of people, like you were saying, like they don't have the same goals in mind, they're not trying to create the same kind of spaces and community, that's completely okay.
Yeah, and like just different worldviews,
Right.
different attitudes towards life, how they treat people, the language that they use with themselves and how they speak to others. You know, something I've sat with is like I've been around a lot of people who I was speaking life into, like, you can do this, you can do that. And then because they didn't believe in themselves, and then they projected that onto me and try to convince me to not believe in certain things, or I couldn't do
Right.
this or I couldn't do that. And that's what comes back for me often, is just like, wow, like that person really tried to put that energy on me. Thank God I was
Mm,
able to, repel that and not, take it in, because had I really listened to that person, I wouldn't have done X, Y, and Z. I wouldn't have done a lot of things. But yeah, I just like empathize with people who can't always do that so easily. And they do have those voices in their heads, and those voices are not theirs. It's the voices of other people. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
right.
discernment is
Yeah.
just so important.
Yeah.
Right. We talk about that a lot too, about it's very easy almost when you are caught in situations like that and you're consistently in that situation to lose your voice of intuition and discernment. I feel like they kind of are cousins. So we are kind of retraining. I'm retraining myself to make my intuition loud again, like really
Mhm.
loud.
Yes.
Because I have found myself in these situations where I think I'm choosing different and I'm really not. And it always is with people. And so it goes back kind of back to what you said of like being just very careful about how you're defining who it is that you want to surround yourself with. So in that same vein, which we touched on a little bit, but how do we kind of combat this loneliness epidemic is what I think a lot of us are calling it now, where
Yeah.
after COVID, post COVID stuff, we don't really know how to interact with each other. There's a lot of
Mhm.
like lost sense of humanity.
Mm,
So we are known to be chronically online, as we've mentioned, that this sense of
Mhm.
digital connection is a lot more prevalent than previous generations. Yet us millennials and even Gen Z are reporting higher rates of loneliness. So
Mhm.
while staying in the middle, how do we kind of combat those things?
I think I think it's twofold, right? There is something to be said about finding and accessing and cultivating belonging within yourself, because
yeah.
you don't even know how to be in community unless you know who you are. And you want to make sure that, like, when you're showing up with people, you're showing up as your full self, so that you know who your people are because they know who you are. If
Mm-hmm.
you're putting on a mask and trying to be this person and then be this person for the sake of being around people, then you're going to go home and still feel lonely, because like the whole time you're around a bunch of people and like you were not yourself. You didn't even talk about what you wanted to talk about, or you let certain people talk to you in a certain way, and you didn't stand up for yourself, or I don't know. There's even like this whole thing going on right now of like, I don't know if you've seen those videos of like people going to events and realizing that everybody's dressed exactly the same, or people
Yes.
not
I
having a
saw
sense of
that TikTok.
style, like because
Mm-hmm.
they're doing that because they feel like they have to fit in, and it's like a homogenous blob, and it's like, look how many people are in that room, but
Right.
is everyone showing up as their full self in that room if they feel like they have to wear a certain style in order to fit
Yeah.
in? Like, that is
Yeah.
just like a superficial manifestation of what I'm talking about, because if people really took their time to cultivate a sense of style because they're expressing who they actually are, then they would be showing up in rooms completely differently. And so that's just one thing. I think that at some point we also have to realize like you do have to show up and be vulnerable if you want to let people know that you want to be in community with them. Like over the past few years, I've gotten a lot better at meeting people in a certain space and that not being an opportunity for me to actually have an engaging conversation, but
Mm.
to at some point at the very least be able to find out how I can be like, hey, your energy is incredible. I would love to grab a coffee with you. But I have to do that. Like that person might be feeling it too, or, I don't know, they might be getting in the way because they're in their head, or they might just be busy or like,
Mhm.
entertained in that moment. But they would love to hang out with you. They would love to be able to extend that experience with you. But if one of you doesn't, extend an olive branch, then it's not going to happen. And every single person I've done that with is a good friend of mine, especially because to the point of being very sensitive, I just do better with one-on-ones. It's not as overwhelming for me. And so being able to like find a person in a space in a group and be like, this particular person is resonating with me more than everybody else. Like, how do I cultivate an experience just for me and this person? That is like a really important avenue and something worth exploring because I now have a lot of those people that I have like individually picked out, and I would put all of them in a room together and they would
Right.
all resonate with each other because I know them specifically, and I just know that if we came together, the energy that they each carry that attracted me to each one of them would be appealing to all of them. And so yeah, I think that's also just like been something I've been trying to be more diligent about because it's not easy to find people that are just like a resounding yes energetically to be like, oh my gosh, this person, there's
Right.
something about this person. Like I just need to like I need to talk to them more. Like we would have so much to explore. And so I don't like to miss out on those opportunities.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of adopting that architect mentality. We had Danielle Bayer Jackson on the podcast like a few
Oh
weeks
yeah.
ago, and she talks about similar things. Like you have to make being a connector who you are as a person. And I think a lot of us who are sensitive maybe fear that rejection, or what if they say no, or what if they weren't feeling the same thing that I was feeling, and like I was really excited to get to know them but they weren't feeling the same. I just encourage people that rejection stings. It sucks. Like I'm not saying that like you're not validated in that, but I mean, a lot of us have, like, we've all lived through it. It's never killed
Yeah.
anybody.
Hmm.
So
Exposure therapy.
right, and it's part of like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's part of being vulnerable, like you said, and putting yourself out there. You're always, whether you're creating a community, starting a business, going down a creative avenue, like you're always going to face rejection. And when you continue to put yourself in those vulnerable situations, you're just building up your resilience to it.
Exactly. It's just temporary. And like over time, you even forget what that felt like. It's
Mhm.
just so much life happens. And you're just like, oh yeah, I remember that. But it's not like a thing that you feel in your body. And so I know that like when it first happens or like the first few days after, first few weeks after, it's like, oh, it's kind of cringe when you think about it. But
Hmm.
Yeah,
you're going to keep living life and it'll fade away.
right.
Right.
And I know that kind of what you were speaking to before, of this feeling of, I would rather have friends than not having friends. I know that we're living in a time right now where, the media and the powers that be are intentionally wanting us to be divided. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of divisive rhetoric and tactics that are being thrown our way. I think that there's a difference for standing for what you absolutely know is right or wrong, but kind of leaving room at the table to at least listen to people and find some similarities. Obviously, that's not including people who are going against your morals or demoralizing you or your community group as a
Right.
person. But I think that too is kind of what we're missing because of social media and just the last 5 years of not being as connected. Is we are just so quick to, like, when I don't agree with you, like, automatically like, you're not my person, you're not in my circle. When you're creating a community and, people are coming to your events or showing up to your book club or things like that, how do you create a spirit of, togetherness and acceptance and love when you are the one, leading the event or whatever the group is, so that people know that they can show up and be their full selves and not feel, immediately shut down?
I think this is why language is so important, because like you kind of let people know where you stand before they even enter the room. When you're writing out invitations and you're putting
Mm.
together some kind of something to invite people, and you're letting them know why you're gathering, like in that language you have to be purposeful, because you will repel the people who don't want to be in a space like that, and you will let people know who are looking for a space like that that this is exactly where they want to be, because as they're reading the words, it carries a certain energy, and it does carry a certain type of knowing, like
Mm.
the person that wrote this, it's not chat gpt, it's a person, it feels like a person, and they are setting the tone for this experience. And then I think also, like, this is why it's so important to know who you are, because, okay, let's say I put out an Eventbrite and it shows that I'm the organizer, and somebody's like, okay, wow, this looks great, but like, who's the person? And they go to whatever else I got going on, and I'm presenting myself in a certain way. And it's like, okay, so this is the person, and then this is the thing they're doing. This matches, this makes
Mm.
sense. And so I think that that's also really important, especially when we're thinking about how we can invite people using the internet, and like how we can inform people using our tools online. And then the other part is like when everything is word of mouth, if you're hosting something and somebody is letting you know that this thing is going on, like if that person knows you and you have shown up authentically in spaces with that person, they're going to vouch for you. And this is why it's just like all around we have to try to embody the essence of like who we are and what we are actually trying to get to, because that is all going to translate one way or another. And so when I think back on the experiences and the gatherings that I've hosted, there's only been one that was like, ooh, this is off. And that was early days for me. I didn't really know what
Mm.
I was doing. This was like everyone's invited. And I didn't know the importance of language. And
Mhm.
so there, yeah, that became an experience where there was one person that was not clear about what the experience was. And I learned from that. And so yeah, that's what I would say, is just like, just try to lead with informing as much as you can, and then like really stand and stand in the energy that you truly do embody, and don't try to manipulate yourself for the sake of trying to attract more people. Like if it's one person, if it's five people, if it's 10 people, that is much better than 40 people showing up to an event that's hosted by somebody who is a chameleon,
Right.
you know?
Mhm. Yeah, especially if our
Because
true purpose at the end of the day is connection, you will struggle to connect with that many people,
Right.
especially if they're not there for the reasons that we set out to begin with. But I'd rather have that than have someone show up looking for something or showing up for like inauthentic reasons.
yeah.
So there's that. And then I also had a follow up question to what we spoke about earlier, which was, we always hear like, oh, define yourself or figure yourself out or try to understand who you are. That could be if you've never explored that at all and you're
Mm.
just starting that journey, getting to know yourself or relearn yourself. I think a lot of us are in that space of relearning who we are versus who we thought we were. What are some very simple steps that we could take to at least start that process so it doesn't feel so overwhelming?
I think that oftentimes, I think like becoming an adult means like overriding what your body is telling you, because you have to do something, right? Like you have to go to work when you're around
Mm.
certain people, you have to be with them because it's like constantly not ignoring your body, but like not prioritizing what information your body's trying to tell you. And I think that
Mhm.
that applies to everything. Like your
Mhm.
body will tell you if it wants to move in a certain direction. If you are exploring a new hobby, if you are going to a new place, if you are going to a new coffee shop, if you are eating something that it's like the first time you've had it, your body will be like more, 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 or let's not do this anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, you keep showing up to a certain space and you're like, why do I feel so good when I'm here? That means that you need to keep going there. That attunement is not something that I think I had for a very long time. I think that that's probably something I've started to really tap into over the past like 2 years, 2.5 years, really
Mhm.
like since getting a divorce and like starting my life over. I committed to being like, okay, who am I for real? And at the time, it felt like I didn't know who the hell I was. And my restart was like at 29 years old. And so it's like I'm 29. I thought I knew who I was. I see that there are certain things that I gravitate towards, and there are certain ways that I want to express myself. But in a lot of other areas of my life, for whatever reason, I keep self betraying, or I just keep putting myself in certain situations that are obviously not good for me. And so when I started over, I was like, okay, you need to really spend time alone and not connect that with rejection or people not wanting to be around you. It's because you need to figure out who you actually are. And so I just opened up a lot of space for reflection. This is some journaling has always been something that I've truly leaned into because it's just been my preferred form of just checking in with myself. And so I just started to ask myself a ton of questions, like literal basic questions. And I would just have a conversation with myself and be like, okay, this is what you want to do. Okay, this is what hurts. Okay, this is what you hope to start doing. This is what scares you. This is the kind of person that you want to attract into your life in terms of friendship. These are the types of experiences that, for whatever reason, you haven't had. Why haven't you had them? Oh, is it because you feel like you're not cool enough to be in certain rooms, or you like just get to the basics of what it is that you're trying to investigate, and and just kind of view yourself as somebody that you're studying. I kind of always approached life as like an investigative journalist, and a lot of that has been external. Like I've always been very curious about other people, always asking other people a bunch of questions, and then I came to
Right.
realize like I wasn't asking myself those questions. And so
Mhm.
if somebody asked me that question, I would not have an answer because I've never sat with that. I think that that is a place to start. It's just like there's no silly question. Just ask yourself the question, but also give yourself the space to actually answer it, and allow yourself to reveal the true answer, even if it's not like a pretty answer or one that you would like to share with anyone. It's one that you should at least know. And so I committed to like a, a journey of that. And I would say like while I was writing the book, I was when I wasn't writing, like my writing windows were like 5 to 8. It was like 5 to 8 in the morning, and then I'd go for like a 2 hour walk, and then I'd come home and I would journal for like an hour or two and go
Mhm.
back for another walk with my dog. Like it was a lot of contemplation, a lot of introspection, and that is what ultimately led to me having a better and more clear indication as to where I wanted to go and what kind of person I wanted to be. And I started to kind of view myself as an avatar. Like, what does the avatar
Mm.
want to eat? How does the avatar want to dress? Like that felt a little crazy, but it was actually helpful. What colors felt good for the avatar? Like that was that
I would
actually fundamentally changed me.
I would imagine so, because if we're so used to doing that for other people and being
Mm.
that person for other people, if you just imagine yourself as one of those people, then why not?
Right.
Right?
That's a good
Yeah,
exercise.
I love that as an exercise. I think because I was separated too and became a single mom fairly recently. And so that
Mhm.
was one of the things that I really had to tackle myself. And
Mm.
so somehow I have also been like a lifelong journaler. I just had kind of stopped for a couple of years. So when all that stuff happened, it's like the bread and butter, you just kind of go right back to the things that feel the most comfortable to you. And I picked that thing up like I didn't never put it down. So it's
Mhm.
been like that's a really therapeutic way and honest way of getting to know yourself, because those can just stay in that book and it's only for you. You know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that you made that point because we're always when you're highly sensitive, you're so hyper aware of everything and everyone around you. And I think it's we around the same years. It's that Saturn return those Saturn return years. Because I was like
Oof.
I was like 29 when I started realizing, like, oh, like this is not the life that I want to live. And the reason why I've been feeling so anxious and depressed for most of my 20s is because it's just not the person I'm supposed to be. And I'm not in the environment I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
So it was like 29 when I made the realization, 30 when I actually like made the change. And so
Yeah.
it's just really interesting that time period of introspection. And it's like the universe just kind of, Saturn specifically, just kind of like boots you in the right direction. Like, if you're not going to make the
Hmm.
choice for yourself, I'm going to
Mhm.
remove everything that's in your way so that you
Yeah.
finally show up and you finally do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's terrifying and it's not comfortable, but like, once you look back on it, you're just like, oh, well, thank God I did that. Because if I would have stayed on that trajectory, my life would have become something I didn't want. And like we were saying at the top, time flies,
Mhm.
15
Mhm.
years can pass. And if you don't make changes along the way, you will not recognize yourself.
Yep.
Yeah. Kind of going along with that, just to close out our conversation, how has being an architect really helped you and your creativity in the facets of your life? I saw you posted something recently about creation and how it connects to your spirituality and your connection with God. I thought that was
Yeah.
really interesting. So I wanted you to share a little bit more with our listeners.
Yeah, that I think like once I really connected with the fact that I am an artist, I have things to say, and the way I do certain things, the way I put certain words together, or the experiences that I'm able to design make people feel something. I was like, oh, I am part of the co-creative process of what it means to be here. Like I can influence this world, I can influence myself, but what I do profoundly impacts whether somebody can feel something, if that is what I designed for them, if that is my intention for somebody to feel something, I can actually get them there. And that, I don't know why it took me so long to realize that. And we can all do that, but I just feel like for so long I was so insecure and I was just kind of a passenger in this world, and just kind of coasting and just doing whatever I thought I was meant to, whatever other people wanted me to do. And I forgot that like I actually have a say. I can actually be like, no, I want to go in this direction. And then after we go there, I want to go in this direction. And along the way, I'm like learning things and I'm carving out paths and all of that. And so that helped me then realize like, oh, I actually am a creative being. Oh, what
Mm.
is creation? Creation is God is all that is. God is like where we all come from and who we are a part of. And when I talk about God, I'm really talking about like source energy, like
Right.
everything.
Yeah.
um and I was like, oh, well, if God is in me, then how do I start showing up to life with that as the center? Like, how can I create today? How can I influence the world today? And then that opens up a bunch of questions, that obviously then gets me to be like, well, I'm rejecting this kind of life and I want this kind of life, but I have to design it. I have to be the architect to this life. I have to be the architect for everything if I want it to be intentional. It's not just communities,
Mm.
it's like yourself, how you
Right.
show up to your days, what are your habits, what are the things you care about, what is the media you're intaking and you're ingesting, how do you speak to other people, how do you dress, how do you smell, like literally everything.
Mhm.
And so it's influenced everything, and it constantly leads to more questions, and it makes me feel like I really have no idea what's going on.
Right.
And so I'm just like, okay, well, then that means I just have to surrender. That's
Yeah.
like quite literally the only thing I can do is every day I show up and I try my best, and I'm not perfect, but I do know that I'm trying my best. And then tomorrow I'll do the same thing. And then like we'll see what that leads to, and what people I'll meet and what experiences I'll have and what opportunities will arise. But that inherently feels spiritual because like you just have to let go and you have to connect with your intuition, which allows you to connect with your guides, and it allows you to
Mhm.
connect with source. And I don't know, it's just like in a contemplative practice, you start to connect with like the essence of who you are and like why you're here, and you kind of have to strip your ego away and how you are perceived by people.
Mm,
And in doing that, that's when you really start to say the things you want to say, even though it pisses people off, because it's not about
right.
that. It's about like, what are you here for? Like for real.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
definitely.
We're just like out here co-creating worlds inside of ourselves. I had this
Yeah.
realization recently that like, well, God in whatever, belief system or whatever
Formation.
noun you use to
Hmm.
describe God was the first creative. And so if
Mm,
we all have, that energy and that light inside of us, then like we all have access to tap into that. It's
yeah.
just how are you going to connect with yourself? What are you going to dig out of yourself? You have to go really deep a lot of times because some people just say like, "Well, I'm just not creative." I'm like, "Well, no, you are.
You
You really are.
are.
It's just like it may
Yeah.
not be in the same way as everybody else. Like you
Hmm.
may not be a painter or
Right.
a writer or a singer, but you still have access to creativity in that way." So, thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Yeah, I love that lens.
Yeah.
I used to be that person. Like, oh, I'm just like, I'm more analytical, I'm more logical. Like, I don't really have a creative bone in my body. And then I started doing other things that were kind of outside of the box, the definition of what we see as a creative or an artist. And I'm like, oh,
Mm.
actually, I'm very creative. And
Mhm.
figuring it out for yourself is so much fun. And I
Right.
think when you start to make those decisions for yourself and you start to say, like, oh, let me try this, let me go by myself and do it,
Mm,
then you really start to be like, oh, that this is me. I feel very comfortable here. I feel
Yeah.
very like at peace here. So when you start
Mhm.
to notice those feelings, I think that's when you kind of come back home to yourself. And then all the questions, like you said, start to flood in, which can feel overwhelming. But like we're saying, one
yeah.
step at a time, write down one thing at a time. If you want to
Yeah.
answer one question, 10 questions, as long as you're answering questions about yourself,
Yeah.
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing. Love, love, love so much speaking with you. We could go on, but we respect your time. So we want to give you a few minutes to speak about some of the things you have going on. Obviously, we're going to link your book, Build It, and they will come in the show notes. But let us know what's going on with the book club and how we
Yeah.
can have access to that.
Yeah, so this year, to the point of initiation and just like doing things, the book club that I started this year, it's called the Awake Book Club, and it's a progressive book club centered around community and progressive literature and love, like
Mm,
I really, really feel called to encourage people to read. The literacy rates right now are insane. People are
yeah.
not reading, and the children are not able to read. They don't know how to read. And I'm just like, okay, how can I just be a part of the solution in like trying to get people to know that reading is not only incredibly helpful for your own evolution, but like it's cool. You know more. You are a better, well-rounded person in the world. And then I specifically am choosing books that help us uncover information that is not very easy to find, and it is by design. And so just like a lot of history books, a lot of books centered around information that helps us better understand why people are the way they are, and
Yeah.
hopefully allows people to connect with their empathy and compassion for themselves, for the communities they come from, or for communities that they are not a part of, but helps them understand from a distance why certain things have unfolded the way they have. And then I also started the Creative Sprint, which is an artist incubator for artists and visionaries who are going to bring forth the gifts and the change that the new world
Mm,
needs. And so that is in its beta cohort right now, but by the end of May, we will officially be launching. And that is going to be a space for people to connect with their inner artists and allow me to help them feel accountable to themselves and to the world. And so
mm,
that is a very fresh and new project that I'm incredibly excited about. It's already feeling very beautiful with the few people that are in it right now. And it feels very spiritual because we are coming together to create. And
right.
it has just blown me open in ways that I was not expecting. I didn't know what it felt like to be carving out time to create with other people and to be in that space. It feels very holy. It feels like prayer, but also something
Right.
different. And so, yeah, I'm very excited to be offering that to the world. And then, yeah, I'm working on my second book now, and I'm just trying to just be a good person. So that's what I have going on.
Yeah.
A lot.
we should definitely always lead with like that's the hardest thing to do. Wake up every day and try to be a good person and try to be kind to yourself and kind to
Right.
others. So
Right.
always at the top of the priority list. But we love that so much. And of course, once we have all the information, we'll link it. Time frame wise, that's actually very perfect since you'll pretty much get ready to launch in May. So that's amazing.
Yeah. I mean,
we
talk
can't
about
wait.
learning to tap into your creativity. It's great that you're creating a container for that. So if anyone's interested, check out the link in our bio. We'll link everything that Kat is talking about. And of course, her book. You can go grab a copy. But thank you so much, Kat, for spending some time with us. We've been looking forward to this for a long time. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thanks for tuning in to this week's EA meeting.
If you liked this episode, please share it with a friend and leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple or Spotify. We'd love to hear from you.
You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Empaths and On Pod.
Don't forget to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts or subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on the notification bell so you're the first to know when we release a new episode.
We'll meet you back here on the Green Velvet Couch next time.
Bye, feelers!